What is up, you guys? Happy Friday. It's Sussan Mourad here with Clevver News. And Post Malone sat down with Joe Rogan for an almost 4-hour podcast where they were both under the influence and talked about everything from Post's music to UFOs to how big whales are. It was an absolute trip, if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Alright, so like I said, for the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, Joe and Post Malone took a trip down memory lane, quite literally.
All right.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers, sir.
Why not?
Pleasure.
Also, precursor, I haven't slept.
I know. We haven't slept. We're on mushrooms. And let's roll.
They started off talking about why Post Malone decided to live in Utah instead of Los Angeles like many other celebs do. Post revealed that he actually fell in love with Utah while he was on tour and found a house on Zillow. You know, just like the rest of us find housing. Gotta love how down to earth he is. He said that while he's lived in Los Angeles in the past, he can't focus there the way he needs to be able to work on music and his other projects. The conversation quickly took a hard turn left and got into the more important topics like whether or not aliens are real. Are you all ready to get into this? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, so Joe was talking about UFOs and how some people lie about having seen them, but Post insisted that he's seen UFOs on multiple occasions with his own eyes. And then Post went into the backstory of the first time he saw a UFO.
I was probably 16. I was in upstate New York, and it would just stay there. So let me precursor this. My aunt and uncle were very strict, and we had to go to bed at a very strict deadline, probably 10 p.m. And I was looking out the window with my cousin, and it's just a light that just stays there and then just goes off. I mean, you can't explain it.
But the UFO conversation didn't stop there. Post said that since his first sighting, he's seen others in both Utah and Southern California. He said, quote, "I used to live in Tarzana. It looked kind of like, it sounds corny, but like a classic force field. It's kind of like a dome in a circular shape. And I'm like, how did no one else see this? But I was there with like 4 other people and they saw it too." But eventually they got off the topic of UFOs and they talked about concerts and what they are going to be like moving forward. They broke down the now controversial Chainsmokers driving concert and tried to figure out if the Chainsmokers themselves should be responsible for breaking the social distancing guidelines.
If it's a drive-in show, why is there a pit?
Right. And also that the dividers between people, that's horse. The air doesn't give a if there's like a little piece of cardboard here between you and the people next to you, that your spit goes through the air and it gets to them. If you got it, they got it.
But Post went on to say that he doesn't think it's the Chainsmokers' fault that the driving concert got out of hand. He says he actually knows them personally, and it's on more than just them. There are a lot of people involved in planning and putting on the event that should be held accountable. They then got back on track and talked about things like their favorite vegetables, dinosaurs, and fighting wolves. I told you this was a trippy ride.
You gotta fight the biggest one.
Bro, they're gonna tear your hamstrings apart.
No, you got to fight the biggest one, because once you fight the biggest one, they're going to think you're the leader of the pack now.
And it was safe to say that fans were living for this entire 3-hour and 49-minute conversation. They have taken to Twitter to share their thoughts, and it seems like almost 4 hours of these two talking wasn't even enough. One person wrote, "Post Malone on the Joe Rogan podcast? It doesn't get much better than that." Another fan commented on some of the bizarre topics covered, writing, quote, "20 minutes into the Joe Rogan and Post Malone interview, and they've already touched on 7 races of aliens, mushrooms, weed, ghosts, living in Utah, and how to write a song." And this fan tweeted saying, "The Joe Rogan and Post Malone podcast is all that matters at the moment." And even some of the people who weren't as into bizarre conversation was still here for the memes. This person shared a screenshot of each of them from the podcast, writing, quote, "Post Malone on Joe Rogan looks like a father reconnecting with his estranged son." And this fan even combined their faces, making this creepy Joe Malone. So regardless of whether or not you watched all 3 hours and 49 minutes of these two talking about everything under the sun, you can probably find some humor in the tweets about it.
I just love Post Malone. If you want more Posty news, you can click right over here for another Clevver video. Then be sure to let me know all your thoughts on this podcast, including, have you ever seen anything that you thought might be a UFO? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, so let me know everything in the comment section below. I'm your host, Sussan Mourad. I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.